you about dopamine. Dopamine's a neurotransmitter that your brain cells use to communicate with each other. And if you've heard about dopamine, it's probably because of its dodgy reputation. You know, dopamine is the neurotransmitter of hedonism, of reward. It's the thing that makes us like sex, drugs, and rock and roll a little bit too much. And to be fair, dopamine does do that. Dopamine is responsible for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But in recent years, scientists have also come to realize that dopamine isn't just about pleasure. That dopamine is also a crucial chemical that allows us to make sense of reality, to translate the helter-skelter of the world into neat chains of causation and correlation. I'd like to talk about this in terms of the work of a scientist named Wolfram Schultz at Cambridge University and Caltech. And he first got interested in dopamine because of its association with reward. So he'd do very simple experiments where he would give a monkey a squirt of apple juice, and monkeys love apple juice. It is like their favorite thing in the world. So he'd give a monkey a squirt of apple juice and measure the activity of individual neurons in the monkey midbrain. And what he found is that sure enough, give the monkey a squirt of apple juice, a dopamine neuron fires in the midbrain, the monkeys get happy, right? That's how it's supposed to work. Dopamine tracks rewards. But then he found something kind of interesting, which is that if you kept on giving the monkeys these squirts of apple juice, after just a couple squirts, these dopamine neurons stopped firing. They got bored by the reward. They habituated to it. They adapted to it. And this also makes a little bit of sense. It's why that sweater we get for Christmas is so exciting the first time we wear it. Then after that, it's just another thing in our closet. Or why that new cell phone is thrilling the first 2 days. Then before long, it's another thing in our pocket. In other words, we are naturally ungrateful. And we can begin to understand why by looking at how dopamine neurons get bored very quickly by squirts of apple juice. But then Schultz found something very, very odd. So one day he's just walking into his lab and he opens up the door to his lab. And as soon as he opens up the door, he hears the distinctive sound of dopamine neurons getting excited. And this is very confusing to him. You know, why are these neurons so excited? He hasn't given them any squirts of apple juice. What are they responding to? That's when he thinks, well, maybe these neurons know that every time I open the door, that in just a few minutes, the experiments will begin, that I will start giving them squirts of apple juice. Maybe this is an expectation of reward. So he sets up this simple experimental protocol where he would ring a bell and give the monkeys a squirt of apple juice. And sure enough, after just a couple trials, these dopamine neurons stopped firing in response to the apple juice and started firing in response to the bell. And if he flashed a light before ringing a bell, before the squirt of apple juice, they would fire whenever he flashed a light. And if he played a song before flashing a light, before ringing a bell, before the squirt of apple juice, they would fire whenever he played a song. In other words, they didn't care about apple juice per se. They didn't actually care about rewards. Instead, they wanted to find the first event in time that predicted the arrival of the reward. They wanted to find the pattern that led up to the apple juice. Now the question becomes, how do these cells get so smart? How does this little circuit actually figure out the lights and the bells and the apple juice? Well, here's where something called prediction errors become so essential. So let's say you're in a mischievous mood and you've trained these monkeys, flash a light, ring a bell, squirt of apple juice. What happens if you flash a light, ring a bell, and don't give the monkeys a squirt of apple juice? What happens then? Well, the first thing that happens, you get a pissed off monkey. It's expecting its delicious squirt of apple juice, but nothing arrived. It's a little annoyed. But you see at the level of these neurons that they fire off this characteristic signal called a prediction error signal, which is their way of saying, oops, we made a mistake. We thought we knew what was going to happen, but it turns out we were wrong. And so they recalculate, they rejigger their expectations the next time they get it right. That's what they're always trying to do. They're always trying to minimize the gap between what they expect, between their predictions and their prediction errors. This turns out to be an incredibly efficient way to make sense of the world. In fact, it's so efficient that computer scientists are now using the same basic prediction error algorithm, the software running on our 3 pounds of wet meat right now, to program cell phone towers, banks of elevators, to make sense of the stock market. The best backgammon player in the world